Hey there, anime enthusiasts. I'm Anime Dreams, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today, we're diving into another thrilling installment of our fanfiction series. What if Naruko became an ANBU captain? Part 4. But before we jump in, a quick disclaimer. This content is purely for entertainment and discussion purposes. I do not own any of the anime footage used in this video. All rights and credits go to their respective creators and copyright holders. Now, without further ado, let's get into the story. Hiruzen Sarutobi had witnessed many events throughout his long life. As a seasoned veteran of 3 shinobi world wars, a leader who had guided Konoha as Hokage, and a bearer of the will of fire passed down through generations, he thought he had seen it all. Yet, never in his years had he heard of the Kyuubi, one of the most powerful tailed beasts, attempting to communicate with its Jinchuriki. The first Jinchuriki of the 9 tails, Mito Uzumaki, had never spoken of any interaction with the beast. Likewise, her niece, Kushina Uzumaki, had never mentioned direct communication with the fox during her lifetime. And yet, here stood Mito's great-grandniece and Kushina's daughter, claiming that the Kyuubi had spoken to her and tried to influence her actions. This girl is going to be the end of me someday, thought Hiruzen, feeling weary. So, let me get this straight, the Kyuubi was telling you to attack Sakura and Sasuke? Hiruzen asked sternly. Yeah, that's about it. Besides, that guy can be pretty annoying, Naruko replied, a hint of frustration in her voice. Naruko, you need to have better control over your emotions. I've taught you better than that, Kakashi said with disappointment. I'm sorry, Nisan. I don't know how I lost control, but I'll do my best to improve, Naruko said, her voice filled with guilt. She hated letting Kakashi down, and the thought of disappointing him weighed heavily on her. You just need to practice more and strengthen your self-discipline. I believe in you, Naruko, Kakashi reassured her. He understood that resisting the influence of the strongest tailed beast in the world was no easy task. Even he wouldn't be able to suppress such a force completely. However, it was crucial for Naruko to grasp the seriousness of the situation and work toward gaining better control. This is indeed a troubling matter, Hiruzen remarked. From what you've told me, it seems the Kyuubi reacts strongly to your emotions, particularly anger and resentment. This is dangerous, Naruko. I agree with Kakashi, if you want to prevent the Kyuubi's influence from taking over, you must learn to control your emotions and strengthen your willpower. How do I do that, Gigi? Naruko asked, confused. More than anything, she wanted to be in control of herself. The idea of being manipulated by the 9 tails was unacceptable. I won't let you control me, you annoying fox, she thought with determination. Hiruzen and Kakashi both noticed the fiery resolve in her eyes. It reassured them to see that Naruko was resisting the Kyuubi's influence rather than giving in to its power. To gain control over your emotions, you need to increase your meditation practice, Hiruzen advised. I don't get it, Gigi. I already meditate, why do I need to do even more? Naruko asked, puzzled. Because you haven't fully mastered control over your mind yet. By meditating more, you'll gain a deeper understanding of yourself, Kakashi explained, amusement in his voice. Hey, what's that supposed to mean? Naruko huffed. That's for you to discover, Kakashi said with a chuckle. Try to look underneath the underneath. Annoying older brothers. Naruko muttered under her breath. Did you say something? Kakashi asked, his usual playful tone returning. Oh, I'm not falling for that, Naruko thought mischievously. Huh? She responded in an overly innocent voice. Hiruzen couldn't hold back his laughter, while Kakashi stared at Naruko in shock. She had just used his own tactic against him. I never thought I'd live to see the day when someone turned your own attitude against you, Kakashi, Hiruzen chuckled. I wonder what Guy would think about this, Naruko mused with a devious smirk. No. Please don't tell Guy about this. Kakashi pleaded, dramatically falling to his knees with exaggerated distress. Only on one condition, Naruko said, smirking. Anything. Kakashi agreed instantly. Is this really Kakashi? Hiruzen thought with a sweat drop. You have to teach me Kenjutsu and Fuinjutsu. Also, I want your newest copy of Icha Icha, Naruko added slyly. What? Why do you want to learn Kenjutsu and Fuinjutsu? Kakashi and Hiruzen asked at the same time, completely ignoring the last request. As you know, my dream is to join the ANBU, and all ANBU members need to be proficient in Kenjutsu. If I start learning now, I'll have a solid foundation by the time I join. As for Fuinjutsu, I just find it interesting, Naruko explained. Well, I can teach you Kenjutsu. You've already learned a variety of ninjutsu, your genjutsu skills are impressive, and your taijutsu is solid. However, I'm not very skilled in Fuinjutsu myself. Where did you learn about it? Kakashi asked. It was mentioned at the academy that the fourth Hokage was a master of Fuinjutsu. So, I went to the library and read about it. Now, I really want to learn, Naruko said eagerly. Naruko, while I agree with Kakashi about training you in Kenjutsu, Fuinjutsu is a complex and dangerous art. Even I have only a limited understanding of it. You'll need proper guidance, and unfortunately, the best person for that isn't in Konoha right now, Hiruzen explained. You mean Jiraiya, the legendary Sannin? Naruko asked curiously. You know Jiraiya is a master of Fuinjutsu, right? Hiruzen asked, mildly surprised. Come on, Gigi. I actually paid attention during those dull academy lectures. You should remember that better than anyone, considering you designed the syllabus. Maybe you're getting too old for this job, heck, even Konohamaru would remember something like that, Naruko remarked flatly. Hiruzen's eyebrow twitched at the comment, but he chose not to respond. Kakashi, on the other hand, let out a small snicker, though he quickly silenced himself when Hiruzen shot him a sharp look. All right, enough of that. Go meditate or do whatever you want, Hiruzen said in exasperation. See ya, Gramps. Oh, Nissan, I believe I asked for a book, didn't I? Naruko said, her tone playful and mischievous. No. Please, not my Icha Icha. I haven't even read it yet. Kakashi whined dramatically. Naruko smirked. You know, I recall seeing a rather peculiar guy in a green jumpsuit the other day. Maybe I should pay him a visit. Kakashi groaned in defeat. Fine. But this isn't over. He begrudgingly handed over the book. I never said it was, Naruko replied with a smug grin. To be honest, I have no real interest in your book, Nissan. But watching you squirm is just too entertaining, she thought deviously. I like you, brat. You have the spirit of a true kitsune, the Kyuubi chuckled darkly in her mind. Can't you just leave me alone? Naruko asked, exhausted. Nope, Kyuubi replied, clearly amused. Why do I even bother asking? She thought, shaking her head. Because you're not very bright, Kyuubi teased before bursting into laughter. I'm done with this conversation, Naruko muttered. All right, I'll see you later, Gigi, she said, opening the office door to leave. Before you go, Naruko, Konohamaru was looking for you, Hiruzen mentioned. I'll hang out with him after the academy tomorrow, she replied, stepping out of the office. Hiruzen watched her go with a chuckle while Kakashi continued sulking. I wonder what that little troublemaker is up to, Naruko mused with a small smile. Flashback, a few months ago. It was a pleasant evening in Konoha. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm glow over the village. Street lanterns flickered to life as more people filled the roads. Shinobi patrolled the area while civilians went about their daily routines. It was just another peaceful day in the Hidden Leaf Village. Naruko was making her way home after finishing her training in the Forest of Death. It had become a daily routine, attending the academy during the day, then training hard in ninjutsu, genjutsu, and taijutsu in the evening. By the end of the day, exhaustion was a familiar feeling, and today was no different. As she walked through the village, she couldn't help but notice the familiar cold stares directed at her. I wonder when they'll finally understand that I'm not that so-called fox, she thought with frustration. Lost in her thoughts, she failed to notice a small blur rushing toward her. Before she could react, someone collided into her, and they both tumbled to the ground. Naruko blinked, quickly assessing the situation. A young boy, around 5 or 6 years old, was now sitting on top of her, looking irritated. He had spiky brown hair, black eyes, and wore a yellow t-shirt with brown shorts. "Hey! Watch where you're going!" the boy snapped. "Says the one who ran into me," Naruko thought dryly. "Are you all right, kid?" she asked, her tone polite despite the situation. "Do you even know who I am?" the boy asked, puffing out his chest with pride. "Should I?" Naruko sighed. The boy stared at her in shock. "What? Of course, you should. I'm Konohamaru Sarutobi, the honorable grandson of the 3rd Hokage and the future 5th Hokage of Konoha," he announced grandly, expecting Naruko to react with awe or respect. Instead, she simply raised an eyebrow. "And?" Konohamaru stuttered. What do you mean and?" "I'm the grandson of the Hokage." Naruko got up, dusted herself off, and then picked up the boy, placing him back on his feet. She crouched down slightly so they were at eye level. "Listen, Konohamaru. It doesn't matter who your family is, what truly defines a person is their actions and beliefs, not their lineage. If you want to be Hokage one day, you need to earn respect through hard work, not just expect it because of your name. Also, do you really think the future Hokage would be reckless enough to run straight into someone like that?" she said with a smirk, trying not to laugh at the stunned expression on his face. Konohamaru could only nod in response, feeling slightly overwhelmed as the older girl remained unfazed by his background and gently corrected him. As someone once said, "To each their own," Naruko remarked with a kind smile before turning to walk away. Konohamaru watched in awe. Unlike the rest of the village, who only saw him as the Hokage's grandson, Naruko had acknowledged him as an individual. Even though she had scolded him, he felt genuinely happy. Someone had recognized him for who he was, not just his family name. "Big sis, what's your name?" Konohamaru called out. "Naruko Hitake," she answered before vanishing into the bustling crowd. The villagers, however, were unsettled. The idea of the so-called troublemaker influencing the Hokage's grandson did not sit well with them. Still, they refrained from taking action, fearing the 3rd Hokage's disapproval. But their opinions held no weight for either Naruko or Konohamaru. Flashback ends. Following that encounter, Konohamaru grew close to Naruko and often visited her. He was like an energetic younger brother, sometimes a bit of a handful, but endearing nonetheless. He constantly bombarded her with questions, mostly about being a shinobi and his training. Naruko, in turn, enjoyed his company. Over time, she developed a deep fondness for him, caring for him as if he were her own sibling. The two spent a great deal of time together, their personalities forming an amusing contrast, Konohamaru's boisterous nature alongside Naruko's more composed demeanor. As Naruko reflected on these moments, a small chuckle escaped her lips. People like Anko, Kakashi, Hiruzen, her friends, and Konohamaru brought joy into her life. They were her support, her source of strength. Before she knew it, she had arrived at her destination, Training Ground 28. It was one of the most secluded training areas in Konoha, rarely visited by other shinobi. The area resembled a peaceful meadow more than a traditional training ground, with towering green trees surrounding the field and a gentle stream flowing nearby. A few training dummies stood scattered around, though the space was largely untouched. It was the perfect place for meditation or for those who preferred solitude. A few bowls of ramen and some quiet meditation. Sounds like a perfect way to spend the day, Naruko thought with a contented smile. However, something immediately felt off. The training ground was in complete disarray. Kunai littered the area, suggesting either an intense battle or a particularly aggressive training session. The dummies appeared battered and barely intact, as if someone had taken out all their frustration on them. Wow, someone must have been really upset, she mused, scanning the scene. Then, her eyes landed on a figure lying motionless a few meters away. Concerned, she quickly approached to check on them. As she got closer, Naruko realized that it was a woman. She was wearing a Chunin flak jacket over a red sleeveless top, paired with black shinobi pants. Her long black hair, though slightly disheveled, still held an air of elegance, as if even in its disorder, it followed her command. Despite the circumstances, she possessed a striking beauty. Her strong yet graceful figure reflected years of discipline and training. Her makeup, deep red lipstick and subtle purple eyeshadow, enhanced her sharp features, giving her an almost regal presence. Naruko took a deep breath, shaking off any unnecessary thoughts. Right now, the most important thing was to see if she was all right. However, there were several concerning things about the situation. To begin with, her hands were bruised and bleeding, her outfit was in disarray with multiple cuts, and her face showed clear signs of exhaustion. The dark circles under her eyes suggested she hadn't been getting enough rest, or perhaps she had been crying. The latter seemed more likely, as the smudged makeup on her face hinted at recent tears. The ruined training dummies nearby made it evident that she had been the one responsible for their destruction, and she hadn't held back. Understanding that she was clearly struggling, Naruko knew she couldn't just walk away. I can't just leave her like this. I really wish I knew some medical ninjutsu, Naruko thought to herself. He carefully wrapped her knuckles with bandages to stop the bleeding. While he couldn't do much about the bruises since he wasn't a medical expert, he still checked her condition and was relieved to find her vital signs stable. Gently, he moved the young woman to the shade of a tree before heading to a nearby stream to fetch some water for her. After returning with the water, he sat beside her, deciding to meditate while waiting for her to wake up. She looked exhausted and troubled, and he figured she needed the rest. Kakashi had once advised him not to wake a sleeping woman. Naruko, of course, hadn't listened and had once woken Anko from her beauty sleep, an act she immediately regretted. She spent the rest of the day trapped in Anko's apartment, surrounded by snakes. Women can be terrifying when they're angry. No wonder Shikamaru always calls them troublesome, Naruko thought with a shiver as she recalled the experience. She took a deep breath and refocused on her meditation. The atmosphere around her felt serene. A gentle breeze brushed against her skin, and for the first time in a while, she truly appreciated the tranquility of nature. At that moment, she understood what Kakashi had meant and silently expressed her gratitude to both him and Hiruzen for their guidance. Everything seemed peaceful, until she suddenly felt herself being pulled into her mindscape. Naruko found herself standing before a vast underground sewer. The area was flooded with water, and an overwhelming sense of hostility filled the air. It was as if the entire place radiated anger and resentment. The walls were dull and lifeless, and in front of her stood a massive set of gates with a ceiling tag affixed to them. The scene was unsettling, to say the least. Behind the bars, a pair of glowing crimson eyes stared at her with pure malice. She recognized them immediately. The eyes belonged to a towering fox, hundreds of feet tall, with 9 massive tails thrashing behind it. Naruko let out a sigh. Can't he give me a break just once? She thought, exasperated. Sensing her lack of concern, the Kyuubi took offense. Without warning, 5 enormous claws shot out from the cage, aiming straight for her. Reacting quickly, Naruko leapt back and activated her Sharingan, barely avoiding the attack. Is that how you greet the person who's been carrying you around for 10 years? Naruko remarked dryly. Be silent, foolish human. I am the Kyuubi no Kitsune, the strongest tailed beast in existence. The Kyuubi roared. And yet, here you are, sealed inside a tiny human like a caged pet, Naruko replied with a smirk, watching in amusement as the fox snarled and attempted another strike, only for the seal to restrain it. This seal must be incredibly strong if it can hold back even the Kyuubi, Naruko thought, genuinely impressed. If it weren't for that cursed 4th Hokage and this seal, I would have destroyed you long ago, the Kyuubi growled. You could try, Naruko said confidently, her smirk never fading. The Kyuubi let out an irritated huff before muttering something under its breath. What was that? Naruko asked, narrowing her eyes. Why should I tell you? The Kyuubi shot back, clearly entertained by her reaction. Naruko's eye twitched slightly, but she quickly composed herself. Listen, Kyuubi, neither of us wanted this. You didn't ask to be sealed inside me, and I never asked to be the one carrying the burden of your past actions. I don't know why you attacked the hidden leaf, and honestly, I don't care. You don't? The Kyuubi asked, intrigued. There are a few reasons. First, some people probably deserved it, Naruko admitted, her voice carrying a hint of frustration. Oh? Is that so? The Kyuubi chuckled darkly. I think I'm starting to like you, brat. But not everyone deserved your wrath, Naruko continued. And second, even if I asked you why you attacked, you wouldn't tell me, would you? You're more perceptive than you look, the Kyuubi remarked. Hey, be quiet, you overgrown furball. Naruko shouted, her tone carrying a hint of childish frustration. Both Kyuubi and Naruko locked eyes in a tense standoff, neither willing to back down. However, after a few moments, Naruko finally broke eye contact, while Kyuubi smirked triumphantly at what he saw as his small victory. Listen, Kyuubi, at least try to tolerate me while we're stuck together, Naruko reasoned. And why should I do that? Kyuubi asked, his voice dripping with arrogance. Because things won't go well for you if you don't, Naruko responded firmly, her Sharingan gleaming as she met Kyuubi's gaze. For a fleeting moment, Kyuubi was taken aback by this new side of Naruko. There was something about her presence, something eerily reminiscent of both Uchiha Madara and the masked man who had once subdued him. A deep intensity surrounded her, a darkness that Kyuubi hadn't expected. He wasn't frightened by her, though. If anything, he found himself intrigued. Naruko was the first Jinchuriki to speak with him directly. Of course, Kyuubi had never really attempted to communicate with his previous hosts either, but they had also never shown any desire to engage with him. Naruko, however, was different. Despite possessing the Sharingan, an ability Kyuubi resented more than anything, she wasn't arrogant, nor did she treat him as a mere tool. Instead, she sought understanding, a middle ground between them. A time will come in the future when a person will rise, one who will either bring true peace to this world or lead it to destruction. Each of you, the tailed beasts, will play a significant role in this individual's journey. No matter how far you wander, you will always be connected. This person will guide you toward the right path and reveal the true meaning of power. Until that moment arrives, embrace your destiny and the part you will play in it, my children. These were the words of the Sage of Six Paths, the one who saved the world from the 10 tails and became a legend. He was also the one who created the tailed beasts. The 9 tails, or Kurama, still remembered his father's words clearly. The Sage of Six Paths was the only human Kurama had ever respected. I wonder if you are the one, Naruko. Kurama mused internally. Hey, Kurama. Snap out of it. Why did you bring me here? I have important things to do, you overgrown furball. Naruko complained, irritated by the sudden summons. Kurama simply stared at her. Right, like your so-called important things include sneaking around spying on people, Kurama scoffed. Hey. I wasn't spying, and she's not even old. Naruko protested, her face slightly flushed. Fortunately, her mask concealed it well. Awfully defensive, aren't we? Kurama teased, letting out a deep chuckle as he saw Naruko's shocked expression. Unbelievable, Naruko muttered under her breath, feeling caught off guard. Kurama roared with laughter. You're an amusing one, kid. Naruko clenched her fists, tempted to respond in kind, but a memory surfaced in her mind. Naruko, you need to control your emotions. I've taught you better than this, came the voice of Kakashi, her teacher, in her mind. I won't let it happen again. I need to keep my emotions in check. Taking a deep breath, Naruko refocused. All right, Kurama. Why did you call me here? Her tone was serious, devoid of emotion. Kurama's laughter faded, replaced by a look of curiosity. I wanted to make sure you learn everything you can from that one-eyed teacher of yours. You're a ridiculous excuse for an older brother, Kurama said, releasing a small wave of chakra as if to reinforce his authority. However, what happened next took him by surprise. Naruko's Sharingan spun wildly, and in an instant, all of Kurama's chakra was completely suppressed, leaving no trace behind. Incredible! Naruko thought, amazed at how effortlessly her Sharingan had negated Kurama's energy. What is this? Kurama thought, startled. She can suppress my chakra just like Madara and that masked fool. This is troublesome. If you insult my brother again, you'll regret it, Naruko warned, her voice laced with venom. Is that a threat? Kurama asked, amused. It's a promise, Naruko replied coldly, making even the mighty Ninetales pause for a moment. She might be a bit unpredictable, Kurama thought, slightly baffled. All right. Just listen, learn as much as you can from those around you. Grow stronger, Kurama ordered. Why do you even care? Naruko asked, genuinely confused. It matters because your fourth Hokage father sealed me inside you in such a way that binds our fates together. If anything happens to you, it affects me too. If you die, I could take years to reform, or worse, I might not return at all. I have no interest in fading away just because you were careless, Kurama explained. Wait. Does that mean you're immortal? Naruko asked, fascinated. Of course. I'm amazing, Kurama said smugly. I have my doubts, Naruko replied with an amused smirk of her own. Enough of this. It's time for you to wake up, your so-called vixen is stirring, Kurama said impatiently. She's not my vixen or anything like that, you oversized fuzzball. Naruko shot back, clearly annoyed. Oh? Then why were you staring at her like that earlier? Kurama asked slyly, a knowing smirk on his face. Naruko responded before vanishing from the depths of the sewer. I wonder if all Uchiha have the same attitude. It might be interesting to stay with you, Naruko, the Kyuubi mused curiously. As Naruko slowly opened her eyes, she noticed that nothing had changed in her surroundings since her conversation with the Kyuubi. The kunoichi before her was also beginning to regain consciousness. Seeing this, Naruko stepped forward. Are you all right? She asked with genuine concern. The woman rubbed her eyes a few times before focusing her gaze on Naruko. For a brief moment, Naruko found herself captivated by the woman's eyes, deep crimson irises encircled by 2 black rings. Her eyes are stunning. Could this be a dojutsu? Naruko wondered, feeling a faint warmth rise to her cheeks. Stop staring at her, you fool. The Kyuubi scolded. Relax, furball. I was just admiring her eyes, Naruko replied casually. If you don't want trouble, I suggest you look away. The Kyuubi warned, making Naruko flinch slightly. Though annoyed, she decided to heed the Kyuubi's advice and quickly averted her gaze. Who are you? The woman asked firmly. Naruko Hitake, she responded with a warm smile. The kunoichi's expression remained serious. What are you doing here? This training ground is reserved for shinobi, and I can tell you're not one. Be honest with me. Wow, so this is the thanks I get for helping, Naruko thought with mild exasperation. You're right, I'm not a full-fledged shinobi yet, just an academy student. But I do have permission to be here, she explained. On whose authority? The woman pressed. Lord Hokage himself. If you don't believe me, you're welcome to confirm it with him. Now, could we move past the interrogation? Naruko asked, a hint of irritation in her voice. The woman sighed. Apologies. It's just unusual for non-shinobi to be here, but I'll take your word for now and verify it with the Hokage later. Thank you, miss? Naruko prompted. Kurenai Yuhi, the woman introduced herself. Naruko nodded. Here, Kurenai-san. I did my best to stop the bleeding on your knuckles, but I'm not a medical ninja, so I couldn't do much about the bruises. Sorry about that. She handed Kurenai a bottle of water. The kunoichi examined Naruko briefly, as if ensuring there were no hidden intentions, then accepted the water and took a sip. Thank you, Naruko-san. But I do have a few questions, Kurenai said. You can just call me Naruko. I have some questions for you too, but go ahead and ask yours first, Naruko replied, prompting Kurenai to nod in appreciation. Alright, Naruko. You said your last name was Hatake. As far as I know, there's only one person in Konoha with that surname, and he doesn't have any living relatives. Care to explain? Naruko hesitated for a moment before answering, You're right. My real name is Naruko Uzumaki, but after Kakashi-san adopted me, I took his surname. Kurenai's eyes widened slightly at the revelation, though she quickly composed herself. Noticing her reaction, Naruko's expression darkened slightly. Do you dislike me because of what's sealed inside me? She asked quietly. Kurenai was taken aback. She hadn't expected Naruko to be aware of the burden she carried, let alone be so perceptive of others' emotions. No, Naruko. I don't hate you, she answered with a reassuring smile. Naruko looked at her with suspicion. Why? I understand the difference between a prison and a prisoner. I trust in the fourth Hokage's judgment, and besides, your actions today prove that you're not the monster people make you out to be, Kurenai said sincerely. Naruko felt warmth spread through her chest. It was always reassuring to find someone who saw her for who she truly was. Thank you, Kurenai-san, she said gratefully. Just call me Kurenai. Now, I have to ask, what exactly were you doing here? You weren't spying, were you? Kurenai asked, her tone turning slightly menacing. Naruko immediately waved her hands in protest. No. I just came here to meditate and clear my mind. I had no idea you were here, and I certainly wasn't doing anything inappropriate. Kurenai studied her for a moment before chuckling. Relax, Naruko. I believe you. You do? But we just met, Naruko said, confused. That's true, but I trust my instincts. And you wouldn't lie to me, would you? Naruko shook her head. No, Kurenai. I'm telling the truth. And thanks for trusting me. Can I ask you something? Kurenai gave a small nod. I'll answer if it's something within my power to share. Fair enough, Naruko agreed. She hesitated briefly before asking, why were you crying? Kurenai's eyes widened slightly. She hadn't realized Naruko had noticed. She took a deep breath, recalling how her life had taken a difficult turn. For most of her career, she had been a regular shinobi, focused on her missions. That changed 6 months ago when the Hokage assigned her a special task, to mentor Yakumo Kurama, heir to the Kurama clan, in controlling her powerful yet volatile abilities. As she recalled the challenges that had followed, Kurenai realized just how much the burden had weighed on her. The young girl possessed an exceptional talent for genjutsu, surpassing even Kurenai in skill. However, she struggled with deep emotional instability. She had developed a dual personality, which acted as a defense mechanism against her insecurities but also prevented her from fully controlling her abilities and achieving her dream of becoming a shinobi. Yakumo's instability was so severe that, without realizing it, she had accidentally caused the loss of her own parents. Despite this, she was a kind-hearted girl, and over time, Kurenai formed a strong bond with her, often treating her more like a younger sister than just a student. Kurenai did everything she could to help Yakumo master her powers, but ultimately, she was unsuccessful. Yakumo's inner turmoil made her abilities unpredictable and dangerous, posing a potential threat to the village. As a result, the Kurama clan insisted that Yakumo be eliminated, but the Hokage refused to take such a drastic measure. Instead, he made the difficult decision to seal away her powers to protect both Yakumo and the village. He entrusted Kurenai with this secret mission, knowing that it would also mean ending Yakumo's chances of becoming a shinobi. With a heavy heart, Kurenai carried out the task, sealing away Yakumo's abilities. To protect Yakumo's feelings, she took on the painful role of making Yakumo believe she had done it out of jealousy. In truth, Kurenai deeply cared for Yakumo and had high hopes for her. She only wanted to shield Yakumo from resentment toward the village. But fate had once again been cruel. Having lost her mother as a child and her father during the Nine Tails attack on the village, Kurenai had grown into a composed and disciplined individual, wholly dedicated to her duties. Many referred to her as the Ice Queen of Konoha, assuming she was distant and indifferent. In reality, she was kind and compassionate, her demeanor shaped by the tragedies she had endured. Sealing away Yakumo's powers, however, was one of the hardest things she had ever done. The pain of that decision weighed heavily on her, adding to the emotional burden she had carried for so long. Noticing Kurenai's sorrowful expression, Naruko decided to offer some comfort. "I'm sorry, Kurenai. I didn't mean to upset you. But sometimes, sharing your pain with others helps. If it's personal, or if it involves village secrets, I understand if you'd rather not talk about it," Naruko said gently, offering a warm, reassuring smile. Kurenai looked at her, surprised by the wisdom in her words. "You're surprisingly mature for someone your age, Naruko. How old are you, anyway?" she asked, hoping to shift the conversation. "You're not the first person to tell me that," Naruko replied with a small laugh. "I'm 10. I'll be 11 in a few months." Kurenai nodded, and the two of them sat in comfortable silence beneath the shade of a tree. Neither felt the need to speak, simply appreciating the peaceful moment. Naruko lay back on the grass, gazing up at the drifting clouds, while Kurenai found herself observing her young companion. There was something about Naruko, an aura of warmth and honesty, that made her feel unexpectedly at ease. In Naruko's presence, her pain seemed a little lighter, her worries a little less heavy. Breaking the silence, Kurenai decided to start a conversation. "You never asked my age," she said, curious. Naruko grinned. "Well, you're a kind and beautiful person, so does it really matter? Besides, I've heard it's not exactly polite to ask a lady her age." Kurenai chuckled at Naruko's response, a slight blush dusting her cheeks. "I'm 17, she finally said. Naruko gave her a warm smile in return. After a moment, Naruko rummaged through her bag and pulled out 2 cups of ramen along with a bottle of hot water. She prepared the ramen with practiced ease, stirring it carefully before offering one to Kurenai. "I know it's nothing fancy, but this is what I have. And if I'm not wrong, you must have been training hard, so you might be hungry. Would you like some?" Naruko asked sincerely. Kurenai hesitated, appreciating the thoughtfulness behind the gesture. "I'm not really hungry, Naruko, but thank you for the offer," she replied politely. After a few moments, a quiet rumbling sound came from Kurenai's stomach. Naruko couldn't help but laugh, while Kurenai looked a bit embarrassed. Without saying much, she picked up her bowl of ramen and started eating slowly. They sat together in comfortable silence, enjoying their meal. Naruko, as always, seemed to be savoring every bite, while Kurenai ate more quietly. However, the peaceful expression on her face suggested she was enjoying it just as much. "I've done things I'm not proud of," Kurenai admitted after a while. She was under a lot of emotional strain. She didn't have many close friends, and her best friend, Anko, was away on a mission. The Hokage was always there, but she couldn't afford to show weakness in front of him. Yet, after spending time with Naruko and getting to know her, even just a little, she decided to open up. Maybe talking would ease the burden she was carrying. Sure, she knew that shinobi lived lives filled with secrecy, and Naruko could very well be hiding things too, but at this moment, Kurenai just needed someone to listen. Someone to stand beside her, if only for a little while. "Did it hurt people?" Naruko asked softly. Kurenai lowered her gaze. "Yes," she answered solemnly. "The Hokage once told me that a shinobi's life is full of hardships, but we do what's necessary to protect those who are precious to us," Naruko said gently. "I'm not here to judge you, Kurenai. I won't pretend I understand your pain because, honestly, no one can truly understand another person's pain unless they've lived through the same thing. She spoke with a quiet sadness, reflecting on her own experiences. The pain of isolation, the harsh treatment she had endured from the villagers, she knew what it felt like to carry burdens alone. But she didn't ask Kurenai for details. If it was something classified, it wasn't her place to know. More importantly, she didn't want to make Kurenai relive whatever was troubling her. Hearing Naruko's words, realization dawned on Kurenai. She had seen how the villagers treated Naruko before, and it saddened her. Yet, now she understood that what she had done regarding Yakumo had been for a reason, to protect both the village and Yakumo herself. Her guilt didn't disappear entirely, but it felt lighter now. It made more sense than before. She had done what she had to do as a shinobi and as someone who cared deeply for Yakumo. "Thank you, Naruko," Kurenai said, her eyes shining with emotion. "Don't mention it," Naruko replied with a warm smile. Kurenai wiped her tears and then glanced at Naruko curiously. "Why do you always wear that face mask? Are you trying to imitate Kakashi?" "You know Kakashi-ni-san?" Naruko asked, intrigued. "Yes, we've been on a few missions together," Kurenai replied. "I'm not copying my brother," Naruko said with a small smile. "This mask is special to me." "How so?" Kurenai asked, tilting her head slightly. "This face mask was the first gift I ever received. It symbolizes the bond between me and Kakashi. It was the first thing he ever gave me," Naruko explained, her voice filled with quiet gratitude. Kurenai nodded solemnly, feeling a pang of sympathy. "Hey, don't give me that look," Naruko said with a small laugh. "Life is tough, sure, but it has its good moments too. Besides, don't you think this mask makes me look cool?" Kurenai chuckled softly. "Yes, I suppose it does." After a brief pause, Naruko's expression turned curious. "Hey, Kurenai, you're a Chunin, right?" "Yeah," Kurenai answered, a little skeptical about where the conversation was going. "Which shinobi skill are you best at? Ninjutsu, Genjutsu, Taijutsu, Kenjutsu, or Fuinjutsu?" Naruko asked, her eyes gleaming with interest. "I specialize in Genjutsu, and I have some skill in Fuinjutsu as well," Kurenai responded. "Really? Genjutsu and Fuinjutsu?" Naruko repeated, sounding thoughtful. Kurenai raised an eyebrow. "Why? Do you have a problem with those techniques?" she asked, feeling slightly defensive. "Not at all, Kurenai. Genjutsu is a highly refined shinobi art, much like Fuinjutsu. I find it fascinating. Being able to disrupt an opponent's senses and divert their attention could make completing a mission far more efficient. It would minimize unnecessary conflict and allow for a more discreet approach. However, I'm not particularly skilled in Genjutsu," Naruko admitted with a hint of disappointment. She chose not to reveal that her Sharingan granted her the ability to cast powerful illusions, as that was a closely guarded secret. "Oh, I assumed you weren't fond of Genjutsu. Are you facing any difficulties with it? I might be able to help since I specialize in the technique," Kurenai offered with a warm smile. Kurenai was pleasantly surprised that Naruko didn't underestimate Genjutsu like many other shinobi. Instead, she showed a genuine interest in learning it. As a Genjutsu specialist herself, Kurenai decided to offer some guidance. "Kakashi says I have a very large chakra reserve, and because of that, I struggle with chakra control, making it difficult to use Genjutsu. But I can at least dispel it, as we were taught in the academy," Naruko admitted honestly. Kurenai nodded in understanding. "That makes sense. Jinchuriki naturally have vast chakra reserves, which often makes fine control more challenging. Well, I can help you develop better chakra control so that you can eventually train in Genjutsu," Kurenai offered with a reassuring smile. Naruko blinked in surprise. She hadn't expected Kurenai to be so willing to help and was a little skeptical about her reasons. "Why would you help me?" Naruko asked cautiously. "I want people to recognize Genjutsu as an art just as valuable as ninjutsu. As a Genjutsu specialist, I'd be happy to support someone who's interested in learning it," Kurenai explained with a gentle smile. Besides, this gives me a chance to do things differently and pass on my knowledge, she thought to herself, feeling hopeful. Well, looks like you've got a volunteer for your mission, Naruko said with a grin. Thank you, Naruko, Kurenai replied warmly. It's getting late, we should head out, Kurenai noted. Kurenai, would you like me to walk you home? Naruko asked, a little shyly. Kurenai gave her a curious look. I don't mean it in a bad way. Hokage-sama taught me that it's polite to walk a lady home. I don't mean any offense, but if you'd rather not, I understand, Naruko said sincerely. Kurenai smiled. It's all right. I'd actually enjoy the company. Arigato, Naruko said gratefully. You seem to be close to Hokage-sama, Kurenai observed as they started walking. Yeah, he's like a grandfather to me. He's always looked out for me and protected me when I needed it, Naruko shared. I'm sorry, Naruko, Kurenai said softly, sensing the hardships behind those words. It's okay, Kurenai. I have Kakashi and my friends now, Naruko said cheerfully, and Kurenai nodded in understanding. They continued walking toward Kurenai's apartment, chatting about various things and enjoying each other's company. Kurenai found herself feeling much lighter, while Naruko was happy to spend time with her. Eventually, they arrived at Kurenai's apartment. Good night, Kurenai. I'll see you tomorrow, Naruko said with a smile. Meet me at Training Ground 28 at 4 p.m. tomorrow. I'll give you some pointers then. And... Thank you, Naruko, Kurenai said sincerely. Anytime, Kurenai. It was nice talking with you, Naruko replied warmly. Just as Naruko was about to leave, she felt a hand on her shoulder. Turning around, she saw Kurenai looking at her with a thoughtful expression. Would you like to be friends? Kurenai asked gently. Naruko blinked in surprise. Are you sure? I mean, not many people in the village like me, and I'm a bit younger than you. Before she could finish, Kurenai gave her a light flick on the forehead. Ow! What was that for? Naruko asked, rubbing her forehead with a small pout. Kurenai chuckled. Friendship isn't about age or what others think. You're a good person, Naruko, and I'd like to be friends with you. Naruko's expression brightened. Then, friends it is. She said with a wide grin. I'll see you tomorrow, Naruko, Kurenai said. See ya, Kurenai. Oh, and... You have really beautiful eyes, Naruko added before quickly disappearing down the street. If Naruko had looked back, she would have seen the deep blush and bright smile on Kurenai's face. Naruko had unknowingly helped her feel lighter and happier, pulling her out of her worries. I look forward to our friendship, Naruko, Kurenai thought with a warm smile. There were only a few things in life that truly impressed Kakashi Hatake. He deeply respected the strength of his father, Sakumo Hatake, who was said to surpass even the legendary Sannin. Then there was his own mentor, Minato Namikaze, a shinobi so formidable that he could defeat entire battalions in mere minutes. Another remarkable figure was Itachi Uchiha, the genius of the Uchiha clan, known for his unparalleled skill. Yet, none of them quite compared to the mystery that was Kakashi's younger sister, Naruko. Naruko possessed an extraordinary talent that reminded Kakashi of Itachi Uchiha. She was a true prodigy of the Hidden Leaf Village. By the age of 10, she had already mastered numerous ninjutsu techniques, demonstrated remarkable proficiency in genjutsu with her Sharingan, and displayed impressive taijutsu skills. Kakashi often found himself wondering if there was anything Naruko couldn't do. Her abilities were astonishing for someone so young, and her strategic thinking rivaled that of a seasoned shinobi. She was meticulous, always planning her moves carefully before taking action. Now, Naruko had begun training in Kenjutsu, and in the future, she might even explore the complexities of Fuinjutsu. Given her incredible progress so far, Kakashi was certain, Naruko was destined to become an unparalleled shinobi, excelling in every aspect of the ninja arts. Naruko had once again managed to surprise Kakashi, this time by developing a unique jutsu of her own. The two of them stood in the depths of the Forest of Death, which had become their designated training ground over the years. Naruko seemed eager to demonstrate her new technique, while Kakashi observed her with a mixture of curiosity and intrigue. "So, what kind of jutsu have you created, Naruko?" Kakashi inquired, his interest piqued. "It's a technique I developed after carefully studying everything you taught me about the Sharingan and its abilities. It's probably best if I show you rather than explain," Naruko replied confidently. "Alright, let's see it," Kakashi said, giving her the go-ahead. "Nisan, I need you to cast a powerful genjutsu on me. You can use your Sharingan or not, whichever you prefer," Naruko requested. Kakashi frowned slightly. "Why would you ask for that? You're aware that genjutsu can be mentally harmful, right?" "I know the risks," Naruko admitted. "But I need to test whether my jutsu actually works. Please, Nisan, if anything goes wrong, you can stop it immediately. But I have to try." Kakashi let out a sigh before nodding. "Alright, but don't blame me if it doesn't go as planned." He considered which genjutsu would be the most effective for this kind of test. After a moment of thought, he settled on one. Forming a series of hand signs, Kakashi activated his technique. Demonic Illusion, Descending Hell Technique. At first, Naruko didn't notice anything unusual. But soon, the air around her grew unbearably hot, and a deep rumbling sound echoed from above. She glanced up and saw a massive fireball, the size of a boulder, hurtling toward her with incredible speed. If this were real, the impact would be devastating. "This is it. Time to test my jutsu," Naruko thought as she activated her Sharingan. Kakashi observed her carefully, ready to dispel the illusion if needed. He noticed Naruko's initial surprise at the incoming fireball, but instead of reacting in the usual way, she did something completely unexpected. The fireball, which had been on course to strike Naruko, suddenly changed direction, heading straight for Kakashi instead. His eyes widened in shock as the flames consumed him. The searing heat engulfed his entire body, making it feel as though he were truly burning. Realizing what had happened, Kakashi swiftly formed the ram hand sign to break the genjutsu. However, the moment he dispelled the illusion, he found himself in an entirely different scene. He was no longer in the forest but trapped in a dark dungeon, bound tightly by heavy chains. The eerie silence of the room was unsettling, and despite his best efforts, he couldn't move. "What's going on? Why can't I move?" Kakashi thought, trying to maintain his composure. "You didn't keep your promise, Kakashi," a familiar voice echoed through the darkness. Kakashi turned his head and saw Obito Uchiha standing before him, staring at him with an unreadable expression. Guilt settled deep within him, and even though he knew this was an illusion, he couldn't bring himself to meet Obito's gaze. "You left me behind," Obito continued, his voice heavy with emotion. Before Kakashi could respond, another voice spoke up. "Why did you let this happen?" It was Rin, appearing beside Obito, her eyes filled with sadness. From behind Kakashi, another voice joined in. "You were supposed to protect them, Kakashi." It was Minato, his tone filled with quiet disappointment. Kakashi clenched his fists, struggling against the chains, realizing just how deep Naruko's genjutsu had taken him. This was far beyond what he had expected. As time passed, one by one, the important people in Kakashi's life began to appear before him, each expressing their deep disappointment. He immediately attempted to dispel the genjutsu, but nothing seemed to work. Even when he tried to control his chakra, his body remained completely unresponsive. Before long, he struggled to even breathe properly. "It's overwhelming, isn't it?" came a familiar voice. Naruko appeared among the crowd, her expression filled with hesitation. She hadn't wanted to take things this far, but she needed to understand just how powerful her genjutsu truly was. "What is this, Naruko?" Kakashi demanded, frustration creeping into his voice. "This is the power of my Sharingan, my most advanced genjutsu," Naruko explained. Suddenly, the illusions began vanishing one by one. Kakashi watched in horror, unable to stop what was happening. The sight left him shaken, he couldn't believe what he was witnessing. How could you do this, Naruko? He thought, a deep sense of regret washing over him. Stop it, Kakashi said firmly, his voice laced with frustration as he struggled to break free from the genjutsu. In an instant, the restraining illusion vanished, and instead of a dark dungeon, Kakashi found himself kneeling on the ground in the middle of the forest of death. The eerie silence around him made him realize that the figures he had seen were no longer there. Instead, Naruko was kneeling before him, her eyes brimming with tears. I'm sorry, Nisan, she whispered, her voice thick with remorse. I never meant to take it this far, but I couldn't stop myself in time. Tears streamed down her face, revealing the deep regret she felt. Kakashi, still catching his breath, was undeniably upset. He had felt completely powerless under the genjutsu, and for a brief moment, he had been tempted to express his anger outright. However, as he looked at Naruko's tearful expression and heard the sincerity in her voice, he realized she hadn't acted with ill intent. She had simply lost control. I'm fine, Kakashi said flatly. Though he tried to sound composed, his lingering frustration was evident. I'm really sorry, Naruko repeated, her voice filled with guilt. Kakashi took a deep breath before asking, what was that genjutsu, Naruko? Yami no Seikai no Jutsu. World of Darkness, she admitted hesitantly. World of Darkness? Kakashi echoed, his curiosity piqued. It's a genjutsu that I can perform with my Sharingan, she explained quietly. How did you learn something like that? I only taught you basic Sharingan illusions, Kakashi questioned, his expression now serious. Naruko hesitated for a moment before answering. 2 years ago, I started exploring my Sharingan's potential on my own. You once told me that the Sharingan can copy and analyze techniques, so I used shadow clones to help me dispel and study different genjutsu. Over time, I realized that my Sharingan could break down how an illusion works and even replicate it. For example, your Magen, Jigoku Koka no Jutsu, the demonic illusion, descending hell technique, it affects a person's sense of smell, sight, and hearing. I was able to copy and use it against you almost instantly. Kakashi's eyes narrowed. What? I know the Sharingan can dispel genjutsu, but how were you able to turn my own technique against me? Naruko gave a small, sheepish nod. My Sharingan neutralized your illusion the moment you cast it. I just pretended to be caught in it, and when the time was right, I reversed it back onto you. I was never actually trapped in your genjutsu. It was a counter technique that reflected your illusion right back at you. Kakashi was momentarily speechless. That's impressive. But what happened after I dispelled the genjutsu? What was that second illusion? His voice carried a sharper edge now, showing his lingering irritation. Naruko flinched slightly at his tone but chose to remain quiet, acknowledging that she had overstepped. Finally, she answered, that was the second phase of my technique. I knew that experienced shinobi could easily dispel genjutsu, so I incorporated another layer using my Sharingan's unique abilities. Kakashi's brow furrowed. Sharingan abilities? She nodded. Once you broke free of the initial illusion, you unknowingly stepped into another one. This time, I merged it with Magen, Narukumi no Jutsu, the demonic illusion, hell viewing technique. In this stage, I don't just manipulate a person's senses, I also influence their emotions, using their fears against them. Essentially, I can take complete control over someone's mind while they remain unaware. If I didn't want you to realize you were under my genjutsu, you wouldn't have noticed at all. Kakashi stared at her in disbelief. The level of genjutsu mastery Naruko had displayed was extraordinary. In the entire history of the Uchiha clan, only a few had possessed such powerful ocular techniques, most notably, Shisui Uchiha. Of course. She's a descendant of Madara's brother, Kakashi thought. Both were said to have possessed the strongest Sharingan in Uchiha history. But even so, for her to be able to cast something this advanced at such a young age is almost unbelievable. What else is she capable of? After regaining his composure, he asked sternly, Does this technique have any drawbacks? Does it harm your eyes or your body? His voice softened slightly. If this jutsu put Naruko at serious risk, he wouldn't allow her to use it. It drains a lot of chakra, but it doesn't physically harm me, she reassured him. It does have some limitations, though. Kakashi arched an eyebrow. Limitations? I thought this jutsu was practically impossible to counter. I'm not entirely sure. Naruko admitted. If you had used a stronger Sharingan technique, like your Mangekyo Sharingan, you might have been able to break free. Also, I can't use this genjutsu frequently. It takes a lot out of me, and I need several days before I can attempt it again. Kakashi mulled over her words. She's right. Maybe my Mangekyo Sharingan could have broken it. But even so, this technique is extremely dangerous. This genjutsu requires direct eye contact to work, and I'm a little vulnerable while casting it, Naruko continued. It's difficult to break, but only a Sharingan user can even attempt to resist it. I know this because I tested it on my shadow clone. You tested it on yourself? Kakashi's voice rose with alarm. Are you serious? That was reckless. For the next several minutes, Kakashi launched into a stern lecture about Naruko's impulsive behavior, making sure she understood the risks she was taking. Naruko kept her head down, fully aware that she deserved the reprimand. After Kakashi finished scolding her, Naruko hesitated before speaking again. There's one major drawback to this jutsu, Nisan. Kakashi's eyes narrowed. What is it? He asked cautiously. I have the ability to influence a person's mind, but the longer I use this genjutsu, the more strain it puts on my eyes, Naruko explained with a hint of concern. When I cast this genjutsu on a cat for a few hours, my eyes even started to bleed. Kakashi's expression hardened slightly. Why did you tell me it didn't harm your eyes when I asked earlier? He questioned, his voice firm. Naruko hesitated before replying honestly, I was afraid to tell you. Kakashi sighed but softened his tone. Naruko, you don't have to hide things like this from me. If this jutsu puts such a strain on you, you should only use it when absolutely necessary. That being said, it was still a reckless decision. But I'm proud of you. He gave a small smile. Naruko's eyes widened in surprise. You're proud of me? She asked in disbelief. Yes, Naruko. This is one of the most powerful genjutsu I have ever seen. Your Sharingan is truly exceptional, Kakashi said with admiration. This technique is likely an A-rank genjutsu, and with time, it could even reach S-rank. Naruko's eyes sparkled with excitement. It's really that advanced, Nisan? It is, Kakashi confirmed. But remember this, never use it on your comrades. His voice was firm, leaving no room for argument. Hi, Nisan. I promise I'll never use it on my comrades, Naruko responded sincerely. Kakashi nodded approvingly. Good. Now, I want you to inform me before you create any new jutsu. Some techniques may be dangerous to you, and I don't want you getting hurt. Naruko smiled. I will, Nisan. If you want, I can even teach you my jutsu. Kakashi raised an eyebrow, a little surprised but also pleased. You want to teach me your own jutsu? Naruko nodded enthusiastically. Of course. I owe you a lot, Nisan. You've always looked after me, trained me, and given me the care of an older brother. Everything I am today is because of you. She smiled warmly. Kakashi was momentarily speechless. Hearing those words filled him with genuine happiness. He truly cared for Naruko like a younger sibling, and knowing she felt the same meant the world to him. I'll do my best to learn your jutsu, Kakashi finally said. And since you're willing to teach me yours, I'll teach you mine. Naruko's face lit up with excitement. You'll teach me your personal jutsu? She asked eagerly. Kakashi had taught her many techniques before, but never one of his own. This was a great honor. It's called the Chidori, Kakashi said as he channeled chakra into his right hand. A bright blue energy crackled to life, producing a sharp, chirping sound. Whoa, Nissan. That looks amazing. What does it do? Naruko asked curiously. Kakashi turned toward a nearby tree and dashed forward. In a single motion, his Chidori struck the trunk, creating a powerful impact that left a deep crater in the wood. Naruko watched in awe. That was incredible. This is an A-rank technique I developed a few years ago, Kakashi explained. Please, will you teach me this jutsu, Nissan? Naruko asked excitedly. I will, Kakashi assured her. But not just yet. For now, let's begin today's training. Yes. Naruko cheered, ready to continue her journey toward mastering new skills. Naruko and Kakashi continued their training for several hours, focusing primarily on refining Naruko's taijutsu. Her combat abilities had significantly improved, showcasing her enhanced speed and agility. Thanks to Anko's rigorous instruction in the heavy style, Naruko had developed a fluid and unpredictable fighting technique. Meanwhile, Kakashi had taught her the Uchiha's intercepting fist, which allowed her to analyze and anticipate an opponent's movements. The combination of these two styles made Naruko's taijutsu exceptionally effective. After an intense training session, the two found themselves resting by a tranquil lake in the Forest of Death. Naruko looked visibly fatigued, while Kakashi appeared slightly worn out as well. Both of them took a moment to relax, enjoying the peaceful surroundings after their demanding practice. Naruko appeared deep in thought, her expression troubled. Kakashi quickly took notice. Something on your mind, Naruko? He asked. Do people deserve second chances? Naruko questioned, her voice filled with uncertainty. Kakashi considered the question before responding. If someone genuinely wants to change and make amends for their past mistakes, then I believe they deserve a chance. Why do you ask? There was something different about Sasuke today at the academy, Naruko said thoughtfully. Kakashi raised an eyebrow. Oh? What happened? He actually acknowledged me with a respectful nod instead of his usual indifferent stare. He didn't insult anyone either. His behavior was unusual, Naruko explained. Maybe he's reflecting on things after his spar with you, Kakashi suggested. But why should I even bother giving him a chance? Naruko huffed. He's always been arrogant and distant. Kakashi sighed. Naruko, I'm not saying you have to trust him immediately, but try to understand his situation. His own older brother betrayed him and took away everything he loved. He's alone, without family or close friends, and his only goal is revenge. Right now, he needs someone to guide him away from that path. If he's showing signs of change, maybe it wouldn't hurt to give him a chance. In a way, you and Sasuke are similar. Naruko took a moment to think before nodding slightly. I get what you're saying. I'll hold off on judging him too quickly. If he really wants to change, I'll be there to help. Kakashi gave her a playful smile. That's the Naruko I know. Suddenly, Naruko shifted the conversation. I met someone yesterday, Nissan. Kakashi's expression turned more serious. Who? A kunoichi named Kurenai Yui, she replied. Kurenai? Where did you meet her? Kakashi asked curiously. Naruko proceeded to recount the entire encounter, how she met Kurenai, helped her, and their newfound friendship. She also mentioned Kurenai's offer to help improve her genjutsu. Kurenai is skilled and trustworthy, Kakashi said after listening. I don't have an issue with this arrangement, as long as you inform me or Hokage-sama about what she teaches you. Though, I'd prefer if you kept me updated. Naruko tilted her head. I don't mind telling you, but what can she teach me? You're good at genjutsu too, right? Kakashi chuckled. I specialize in ninjutsu. While I'm proficient in genjutsu, my expertise lies mostly in Sharingan-based illusions. You've already surpassed me in that area. Naruko grinned at the compliment. That means a lot, Nissan. But I'm curious, why the sudden interest in genjutsu? Your Sharingan illusions are already strong enough, Kakashi pointed out. I don't want to rely solely on my Sharingan, Naruko explained. There might be times when I can't use it, and I need other ways to fight. You always taught me to have a backup plan. Kakashi nodded in approval. That's a good mindset. Still, even though Kurenai is a friend of mine, you should never trust anyone blindly. Shinobi rule number 38, Naruko interjected with a smirk. Kakashi let out an amused sigh before lightly tapping her on the head. Smart Alec. Hee hee, don't worry. I won't share anything important until I know I can trust her, Naruko reassured him. Good, Kakashi said. Anyway, I should head to training ground 28. I'm supposed to meet her soon, Naruko said as she got up. Kakashi's expression turned serious again. If you notice anything suspicious, report it to me immediately. And if you're ever in trouble, call for help, don't try to handle everything on your own. I will, Naruko promised before heading out. Naruko had just arrived at the eastern gates of the Forest of Death when she sensed several chakra signatures approaching. Trusting her instincts, she swiftly drew a kunai and adopted a defensive stance, preparing to confront whoever, or whatever, was coming her way. While Naruko was not one to be overly cautious, she understood that very few people ventured into the Forest of Death. Typically, only select ANBU operatives and Anko had reason to be there. Given the circumstances, it was highly likely that her pursuers were ANBU, making escape nearly impossible, especially now that they were so close. Naruko was confident in her abilities, knowing she had reached the level of a jounin. However, even she was aware that facing an entire squad of ANBU alone would be an overwhelming challenge. She had assured Kakashi that she wouldn't act recklessly, but at this point, there was no other option. Her suspicions were confirmed when a team of ANBU operatives landed nearby. Their featureless masks were identical to those worn by the ANBU who had confronted her years ago. They're the same ANBU as before. What do they want with me? Naruko thought, instinctively preparing for a potential fight. We have no intention of engaging in combat, Naruko-san, a female ANBU stated in a calm, measured tone. Naruko narrowed her eyes. Then why are you here? She asked cautiously. We are simply here to deliver a message, the ANBU replied. From whom? Naruko inquired, her suspicion still evident. Danzo-sama has requested to speak with you, the woman informed her. Naruko frowned. And why would I agree to that? The last time one of you showed up, they tried to attack me, she said, her voice carrying clear distrust. Danzo-sama wishes to discuss something regarding your father, the ANBU revealed. Naruko froze. Her anger dissipated instantly, replaced by sheer shock. Despite her countless efforts, she had never been able to uncover any information about her father. If Danzo truly had answers, then she couldn't ignore this opportunity, no matter the risks. She fixed the ANBU with a serious look. Why should I trust you? And who exactly is this Danzo-sama? We have no intention of harming you, Naruko-san. Danzo-sama will personally answer all of your questions. The choice is yours. If you decide not to accompany us, we will leave immediately, the ANBU assured her, her voice unwavering. Naruko hesitated, weighing her options. There was no denying the potential danger, but the possibility of learning about her father was too important to ignore. Even if she had to take a risk, she was willing to face it. Fine, she finally agreed. But if I sense anything suspicious, I will fight back. Understood. However, we must cover your eyes, as the location we are taking you to is highly classified, the ANBU stated. Naruko hesitated briefly before giving a small nod. She felt a gentle but firm hand rest on her shoulder, and in the next instant, she experienced the rapid displacement of a sunshine. For what felt like several minutes, she sensed herself descending down a long flight of stairs. At last, the movement stopped. The blindfold was carefully removed, and Naruko blinked to adjust to her surroundings. She found herself standing in a dimly lit room, devoid of furniture. The only decorations were a few framed pictures on the walls, one depicting the Hidden Leaf Village, another featuring the second Hokage. The lack of personal touches made the space feel cold and calculated. A faint tapping sound echoed through the room. Naruko turned toward the source and spotted an elderly man standing before her. He had black, slightly unkempt hair, and though his face was lined with age, his expression was composed. He wore a long gray robe that concealed most of his body, with his right arm hidden beneath the fabric. A bandage covered his right eye, adding to his enigmatic appearance. "You must be Danzo," Naruko said, her voice even. "Indeed," Danzo replied neutrally. "I appreciate you coming. There is much to discuss." Naruko wasted no time. "What do you know about my father?" she asked, her focus unwavering. Danzo observed her for a moment before gesturing toward the pictures on the wall. "Before we speak of that, tell me, what do you make of these images?" Naruko followed his gaze and studied the photographs. One depicted the village, the other showcased the second Hokage. "It's a picture of Konoha," she said first. "And if I had to guess, you keep it here to emphasize the village's importance. You don't seem like the type to keep decorations just for show." Danzo let out a quiet chuckle. The ANBU station nearby remained impassive. "You have a keen mind," Danzo remarked. "And what about the Nidaime?" Naruko considered her response. The second Hokage was one of the strongest shinobi in history. He played a major role in shaping the village's structure, establishing many of the rules we follow as shinobi today. He was strategic, pragmatic, and deeply committed to Konoha's safety. Danzo nodded approvingly. "It seems Kakashi has trained you well." Naruko stiffened. "How do you know that Kakashi Niazan is my mentor?" she asked, startled by his knowledge. Danzo remained composed. "I know many things about you, Naruko. Including the fact that you possess the Sharingan." Naruko's eyes widened in shock. "That's impossible," she said, unable to mask her disbelief. Danzo's voice remained steady. "We live in a world of deception, Naruko. What you perceive as reality may not always be the truth. Many people choose to see only what they wish to believe. However, I make it my mission to know everything that concerns Konoha, including you." Naruko's mind raced. If Danzo knew about her Sharingan, what else did he know? He seemed to possess an unsettling amount of information about her life. She needed to uncover the full extent of his knowledge. "How do you know about my Sharingan?" she demanded, her tone firm. Danzo did not answer immediately. Instead, he posed a question of his own. "Before I tell you that, let me ask you something. Why do you think the fourth Hokage chose to seal the 9 tails within you?" Naruko remained silent, processing his words. Danzo took her lack of response as a sign to continue. "You were made the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi to safeguard Konoha. Only those with the exceptional chakra reserves of the Uzumaki clan could contain its immense power. However, after the destruction of the Uzumaki clan during the Third Great Ninja War, very few remained. You should know that your mother was the second Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, and your great-grandaunt was the first," Danzo explained. Naruko stood frozen, the weight of his words pressing down on her. The world around her seemed to blur as the revelation sank in. Her mother had been the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, just like her great-grandaunt. Questions swirled in her mind, but before she could voice them, Danzo continued. "Now you understand that the fourth Hokage didn't choose you on a whim. He had no alternative," Danzo stated calmly. A newfound respect for the Yondaime filled Naruko's heart. She realized now that it hadn't been a cruel choice but a necessary one. If she had been in his place, would she have done any differently to protect her loved ones in the village? "But that wasn't the only reason the Yondaime entrusted you with this responsibility," Danzo added. "Then why did he do it?" Naruko asked, keeping her emotions guarded. "Because he had absolute faith in you," Danzo said firmly. "He trusted his own child more than anyone else to wield such power and defend the village." Naruko's breath caught. Her entire world tilted at his words. "The Yondaime was my father?" she asked, barely above a whisper. The idea was almost too staggering to comprehend. The man she had idolized, the hero who had given his life for Konoha, was her own father. Yes. Minato Namikaze, the fourth Hokage, was your father. You are his legacy, Danzo confirmed, watching her reaction. I assume Hiruzen never told you this, did he? No. Gigi never said a word, Naruko admitted, her voice laced with disappointment. He always told me he would explain when I was older. Danzo's smirk deepened. There are many things Hiruzen has kept from you. I doubt he even told you that you still have a living relative. Naruko's heart skipped a beat. A relative? Someone from my family is alive? She asked hopefully. She was grateful for Kakashi's presence in her life, but if there was someone from her own bloodline, she needed to know. Yes, Danzo revealed. Her name is Tsunade Senju. She is the granddaughter of Mito Uzumaki, the wife of the first Hokage. That makes her your great-granddad's descendant and your mother's cousin, essentially, your aunt. A surge of emotions flooded Naruko, happiness, shock, and a flicker of anger. Tsunade Senju, one of the legendary Sannin, was her aunt? If she was still alive, why had she never once come to see her? Why had Hiruzen kept this a secret? And I assume Hiruzen never mentioned that you have a godfather either, Danzo continued. A godfather? Naruko repeated in disbelief. Yes. Jiraiya of the Sannin is your godfather, Danzo revealed. Naruko clenched her fists. With each new revelation, frustration bubbled up inside her. Her true family had been out there all along, yet they had never come for her. Hiruzen had hidden everything, leaving her to grow up alone. Seeing her internal conflict, Danzo decided to press further. Before you assume the worst, you should know that Tsunade did not abandon you, he said, his tone shifting slightly. Naruko's gaze snapped to him. What do you mean? She asked, wary yet eager for answers. She was the one who first adopted you when you were an infant. She raised you for the first 3 years of your life, Danzo explained. Naruko's eyes widened. She adopted me? She repeated, a warmth spreading through her chest. She had thought she had been alone from the start, but Tsunade had cared for her. Yet, if that were true, how had she ended up in the orphanage before Kakashi took her in? Yes. It was one of Konoha's best-kept secrets. She loved you as if you were her own child and wanted to raise you, Danzo said, watching her reaction carefully. But Hiruzen took you away from her. Naruko's throat tightened. Why? Why would Gigi do that? She asked, her voice trembling on the edge of tears. Danzo took a measured breath before responding, his voice calm yet unwavering. I did not intend for you to be harmed. The purpose of that encounter was to assess your capabilities and push you to awaken your potential. As a shinobi, challenges and adversity shape who you are. Strength is not given, it is forged through trials, he explained. Naruko listened intently, her emotions conflicted. On one hand, the revelations about her past were difficult to accept. Tsunade, one of the few people who had shown her genuine care, had been forced to leave her behind. Hiruzen, the man she once saw as a grandfather, had made decisions that kept her in the village, decisions that may not have been entirely fair to her. And then there was Jiraiya, her godfather, who had seemingly chosen his spy network over ever being there for her. But on the other hand, she knew the weight of responsibility that came with being a shinobi. The village always came first. That was the unshaken rule of the shinobi world, and Danzo's words reinforced that ideal. Even if you doubt me, you cannot ignore the truth, Naruko. You are the daughter of the fourth Hokage, and he gave his life for this village. You inherited his will, and your strength is proof of that. The people may not always acknowledge you, but your duty remains the same, to protect Konoha at all costs, Danzo stated firmly. Naruko clenched her fists. Her father had believed in this village so much that he sacrificed everything for it. If she walked away from that responsibility, wouldn't she be turning her back on everything he stood for? But at the same time, was it truly fair that she was never given a choice in the matter? You say all of this as if it justifies everything. But none of you ever asked what I wanted, she said, her voice steady but laced with frustration. Danzo remained unfazed. That is the burden of a shinobi. We do not always get to choose our path. We walk the road that is necessary, not the one that is easy. Naruko sighed. Deep down, she understood that. The life of a shinobi was never simple, and hers was even more complicated than most. But she would not let others dictate her decisions anymore. If she was to protect Konoha, she would do it on her own terms. She looked Danzo in the eyes. I will protect Konoha, not because you tell me to, but because it's my choice. And I will do it in my own way, not yours. Danzo studied her for a moment before giving a slight nod. Then prove it, Naruko Uzumaki. Naruko didn't need to say anything else. She had already made up her mind. I merely wished to assess how much you had grown under Kakashi's guidance. I never intended for the ANBU to harm you, only to test your abilities. However, an unfortunate accident led to one of them falling in battle, Danzo explained. Naruko lowered her head, feeling a deep sense of regret. Even though she had acted in self-defense, she despised unnecessary conflict. As a shinobi, she understood that battles were sometimes unavoidable, but that didn't mean she had to accept the idea of taking lives so easily. Danzo observed the remorse on her face. If any of his subordinates from Root had shown such weakness, he would have dismissed them without hesitation. However, he knew he had to be patient if he wanted Naruko to align with his vision. You should not feel ashamed. Their sacrifice was not in vain. Because of that incident, your Sharingan awakened, and your abilities have grown significantly. They fought bravely, fulfilling their duty as true shinobi, Danzo stated with pride. How can you say that about your own people? Naruko questioned, frustration evident in her voice. True shinobi understand the value of sacrifice. Their loss is unfortunate, but I do not regret it. Instead, I honor their dedication to the village. My sole objective is to protect Konoha and bring lasting peace to this world, Danzo declared firmly. While his words carried conviction, his definition of peace was vastly different from Naruko's. Danzo envisioned a world where Konoha reigned supreme, but Naruko didn't need to know the full extent of his plans just yet. He had greater ambitions in mind, and she was a key part of them. Naruko, on the other hand, longed for a peace built on understanding, a world without hatred, sorrow, or unnecessary suffering. A place where families stayed together, where no child had to grow up alone, and where shinobi could coexist without resentment. Despite her doubts about Danzo, she couldn't ignore that he, too, spoke of peace. And that made her curious, how could their visions be so different when they both sought the same goal? I, along with a few of my allies, do whatever is necessary to safeguard Konoha and ensure peace in the shinobi world. We take the actions that must be taken, Danzo stated with confidence. Are you trying to go against Jiji? Naruko asked firmly. She was still upset with Hiruzen for keeping secrets from her, but despite her frustration, she still cared about him. If Danzo had any intentions of harming him, she would stand in his way. No, Naruko. Hiruzen and I are comrades. While we have different perspectives and approaches, our goal remains the same, to protect Konoha. I simply handle matters that Hiruzen cannot, Danzo explained smoothly. You don't want to become Hokage? From the way you talk, it sounds like you disapprove of Jiji's leadership and believe you could do a better job, Naruko pointed out, her eyes narrowing slightly. Danzo silently acknowledged Naruko's perceptiveness. She is quite observant. I must give credit where it's due, Kakashi. No, I have no desire to become Hokage, Danzo responded with a composed expression. My only intention is to assist Hiruzen. He was my comrade in battle, and it is my duty to support him in protecting the village. Danzo then tapped his cane against the floor, signaling an ANBU to step forward with a scroll. The masked shinobi presented it to Naruko, who took it with curiosity. What's in this scroll? She asked, examining it closely. This contains a summoning contract for crows, Danzo revealed with a slight smirk. Naruko's eyes widened in surprise. She knew how rare and valuable summoning contracts were, they were a significant asset to any shinobi. Few had the privilege of wielding such power. Kakashi had his Ninken, and Jiraiya was the renowned Toad Sage. For Danzo to offer her a summoning contract was unexpected. "Why are you giving this to me?" Naruko asked cautiously. "Consider it a gift," Danzo replied. "I trust that you will use it wisely to help protect the village." Naruko wasn't convinced. "And what do you expect in return?" "I doubt you would offer something so valuable without reason," she said, her voice laced with suspicion. Danzo was a master of persuasion. He had carefully drawn Naruko toward his side, first by using her curiosity about her parents as bait, then by exposing the secrets Hiruzen had kept from her, subtly planting doubts in her mind. Now, by presenting her with a valuable gift, he aimed to solidify her trust and influence her beliefs. Naruko was crucial to his long-term plans. As the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails, as well as a descendant of the first and second Hokages and the daughter of the fourth, she held great political and military potential in Konoha. If she ever aspired to become Hokage, having her as an ally would be a significant advantage for Danzo. Moreover, Naruko possessed great potential as a shinobi. If she could come to understand and adopt his ideology, she could become his greatest asset. "I believe you have the potential to use this contract better than anyone else," Danzo continued tactfully. "I ask for nothing in return. Your father dedicated his life to this village, and the least I can do is help guide you in protecting the legacy he fought for." Naruko considered his words. If Danzo was truly offering this gift without expecting anything in exchange, she saw no reason to refuse. Summoning contracts were rare, and this could be an incredible opportunity. She gave a small nod of acknowledgement. Danzo watched with satisfaction. At last, everything is falling into place. "Now, I have one final question for you, Naruko," he said, his gaze steady. "Are you willing to do whatever it takes to become a true shinobi and work with me to protect Konoha and bring lasting peace to the world?" The room fell silent. All eyes were on Naruko, awaiting her answer. In this moment, her decision could shape the future of Konoha and the shinobi world. Dear YouTube family, that's a wrap for now. Hope you had a great time watching this segment. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below, I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for tuning in. Anime Dreams.